Hello, this is Old School from whatthebuck.net. This is a report on Mike Williams. As many of you are aware, Mike Williams was arrested this morning for DUI just outside in Brandon, actually probably 5 miles from my house. He was pulled over for going 7 miles an hour over the speed limit, 52 and a 45, and reportedly swerving. The police then issued a breathalyzer test where he blew a .061, I believe, and a .065, both under the legal limit. But one thing to keep in mind is that it is now no longer driving while intoxicated, or DWI, it is DUI, which is under the influence. And it's also under the influence of anything, not just alcohol. So while he still blew underneath the limit, that does not mean that he is exonerated by default. They issued a field sobriety test. He did comply and said that he would go in and give a urine test as well. So Mike Williams complied in every way that he could with the officers. Now, this has caused an outcry in Tampa and across the league, I'm sure, that he should be suspended, he shouldn't be allowed to play. This is now triggered to an issue somehow with Raheem Morris. They're now pointing to Aqib Talib with Jeremy Stevens. These are all young men with almost limitless resource. We got to look at this situation and look at what happened. All right, 23-year-old guy goes out, comes back, probably had a couple drinks, obviously did. He did have alcohol in his system. Did not have enough that he would be declared legally drunk. But the police do not need you to be there to arrest you. So what are the police officers' options at this point? They have someone they pulled over for purportedly swerving and speeding who has had alcohol. We don't have any other details that I'm aware of about his demeanor. There will be video available, I'm sure, at some point. But the police have got to do the best thing that they can do to make sure that no one else is hurt. And in this case, it was to book him and bring him to Orient Road. So do I have an issue with what they did? No, not at all. Do I think that this guy should be, dragged through the mud because of what happened? No, not yet. We don't know what exactly did happen yet, other than he sped and allegedly swerved and was not intoxicated by the standards set forth by the state of Florida. So the thing you hear right now is it's very poor judgment by Mike Williams. I can't believe he would do that. I would caution you in your glass house to be careful throwing stones. The amount of alcohol he had on his breath is probably the equivalent of having 1, maybe 2 beers. And I'd be very surprised if most of the people watching this video have not done exactly what he did. The other one is nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Well, last time I checked, there is no curfew for being out, right? I can think of a number of times where I, at 38 years old, have gone to a friend's house, had a couple of beers, stayed very, very late, wanted to make sure I stayed and sobered up, then drove home. Do I know what my blood alcohol content was at that point? No. I felt like I was capable of driving. I didn't feel as though I endangered anyone. Could I have possibly swerved? Heck yeah, I've seen people swerve from picking up their phone. Right, texting, any number of reasons. But all of them gave the police officers probable cause to pull him over, along with the speeding, and to take him to Orient Road Jail, which was the right thing for them to do. But what it doesn't do is make Mike Williams a monster. What it doesn't do is paint a bad picture about his issues before in college. Right? This is not the point. That is sensationalism. Right? This is a 23-year-old kid who, by external viewpoints, looks like he did everything right he could have, except for if he had any blood alcohol level at all, which is tough to tell, obviously, he should have picked up a phone and called for a ride, like all these guys can. That's the lesson to be learned here. Now, the Bucks have let a statement out that the captains have met with the coaching staff. They've interviewed Mike. They've decided he will travel with the team and he will play. I support that stance. I definitely believe there's another stance you could take where you're trying to set a new tone in the locker room where you say there's a zero tolerance policy for any run-ins with the police. We don't have that here, right? We do not have that here. So if you're going to establish it now, that's okay, but you've got to be consistent. It seems to me like the team has done the right thing in this case and said, okay, we interviewed Mike, we spoke with him, we spoke with the officers, we're doing everything we can do. When we find out more information, then we'll take the next steps. Now, where this can go sideways quickly is if his urine test comes back and there's something else there. Right? That's where this can go downhill quickly. But here's the funny part, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. So we have to wait for that test result. And as it is right now, I just don't understand why it's so common for people to start putting on this old fogey hat of, well, I just don't see why he was out at that time in the morning anyway. It's a West Coast trip. Sure, he had a walkthrough this morning at 10 o'clock, but I can't tell you how many times I've come home at 3:30 in the morning after playing poker at a friend's house or watching a UFC fight and then gotten up and done work at 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. It happens. Now, I'm clearly not a top flight athlete, but at the same time, I work at a job that requires a tremendous amount of intellectual capacity. But I can still get that done, just like I'm sure Mike could have gotten what he needed done. So hopefully what Coach Morris and the team has done is said, listen, Mike, you're a young guy. This was a mistake. We're going to get through it together. In the future, and this is the message to the rest of the team, pick up your phone. call us. We will come pick you up, right? The same thing we used to rail on the Bengals about all the time. These guys have the availability of a free ride home. Even if they don't want to spend their own money, which they have copious amounts of, there is no excuse for it, right? But should that mean he should be suspended? Does that mean he did this horrific lapse in judgment? Does it mean that there's any tie into anything that happened in college? No, it doesn't, guys. Let's look for real news and stop wasting our time on crap. Now, I'm going to have a preview video up for the 49ers game. It's a big game for us, a West Coast trip. The team's on the plane, headed out there now. But I had to get this stuff off my chest because it's amazing. Ever since this morning when I read the first article, and it's been every single radio show since then, have been the lectures and the pontificating about how I just expected more out of this young man, knowing full well a lot of these cats I've seen at bars in channel side late, and I don't think they're calling limos, right? So be careful what you say about folks, guys, because we're all human. We all make mistakes. The fortunate thing is the police seem to have done the right thing. They took someone they were not comfortable with letting drive, and they booked him. Sucks. Lesson learned, Mike, right? What could have gotten worse is if he had driven the rest of the way home and actually got into an accident and hurt somebody, himself or somebody else. So don't jump on the police. Don't start throwing up any sort of profiling cards or anything like that, right? What happened here after the event is the best it could have turned out. Now we got to find out what the facts of the case are, and if it turns out there's something else in the system, then we deal with the discipline. But until then, let's all take a step back and stop judging people.